If you spend some time in the Old Testament, you'll keep seeing the same story repeated over and over. It's the story of a people connected to God through the Word, through the land, and through the observance of their law. Proclaim the power of God, whose majesty is over Israel, whose power is in the heavens. You, God, are awesome in your sanctuary. The God of Israel gives power and strength to his people. It is a story of holy places, promised land, and kingdoms, always rising, falling, and being restored. You gave abundant showers, O God. You refreshed your weary inheritance. Your people settled in it, and from your bounty, God, you provided for the poor. Which makes the brief window of time that Christ walked among us so special, because he was the catalyst for everything that followed. Then they gathered around him and asked him, "Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom of Israel? You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth." If God was no longer contained in a cloud, a tent, or a temple where we could seek him, serve him, and keep his traditions, now he could be found in the hungry, the imprisoned, the poor, and the weak. Though the temple was no longer standing, neither were there any walls that could contain his kingdom in this world. If he was no longer tied to a certain place on the map, then he was also connected to every believer in the far corners of the world, where he was reflected in their love for him. Stand firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings. The mighty power that was sent out as a promise to all who heard it seemed like a collapse of an ending, a calamity to those who were so heavily invested in how it used to be. If we hung our hope and stood fixed in that spot where he used to be, if we clung so desperately to what we had before that we were unable to see what we had before us, we would be unable to recognize what we had right there beside us, what we carried right there inside us, what we had been blessed with all along, because the plan was always going to change. Dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on to you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. The boundaries were always going to be stretched, and the God was going to be revealed would be by necessity be more portable, more accessible, and more knowable than we could anticipate. He wouldn't just be a God of high and holy places. He was the God who sought out the lowly and the lonely in the empty places of the world. He was the God who has set his people on the paths that took us far from home and closer to him, to each other. I will remain in the world no longer, but they are still in the world, and I am coming to you. If we weren't confined to the temple, neither were we required to spend our lives in the ruins, consumed by fear, cut off in anticipation of defeat. We became free to walk as he did, to suffer as he did, to be reborn and resurrected as he was. But rejoice insomuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. If you are insulted because of the name of Christ, you are blessed, for the Spirit of glory in God rests on you. Our part of the story is going to be written in the commonplaces. It would be carried as a new promise to new lands. And if we saw kingdoms fall here on earth, we would not be bound to sifting through the rubble in search of our inheritance. We would be tasked with building it up in exile with everything that we did, restoring it in everyone that we met, and invested in the kingdom that would never end. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. We would never be in exile again. We were on a journey that led us always to his kingdom. We are free to build something new wherever God led us. We were saved and renewed as often as we looked upon a new horizon and took up the next leg on the path that God had set before us. No matter what we had suffered, what we had endured, or what we had lost, our treasure and our inheritance was always stored up for us. And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. To him be the power forever and ever. So long as we never lost faith, or hope, or love, if we were only able to forgive what we had lost before, to seek what we had still had before us, to know who was always beside us, and to find what we had inside us.